Recent public reporting have revealed that I have personally been sabotaged by a sitting United States senator and was called a dumbass by a sitting member of the House of Representatives. Now, if you're wondering why I'm smiling at these two revelations, it's because that must mean we're doing something right here on this channel. And I think the answer to that is definitely yes. First, a little bit of background. First, we'll start with the U.S. Senate. Senator Ted Cruz was kind of exposed over the weekend in an Axios report where some secret recordings that had been made when he was given a speech to some Republican donors in his attempt to get ready to run for president in 2028. According to these reports, at one point in the recording, Cruz alleges that the Vice President Vance and Tucker Carlson pushed for the ousting of former National Security Advisor Mike Waltz. And what was his sin? Because Waltz supported bombing Iran, a position that Trump ultimately embraced, but that initially Vance and Carlson were not behind. And it says that they didn't want Waltz in there, at least according to this. I don't know if that part's true or not, but they didn't want him in there because he wanted to bomb Iran. And the likes of Ted Cruz also wanted that. But apparently the vice president and the Tucker Carlson, and we certainly know that's the case, did not want that. Now, interestingly enough, it also says that Cruz says that the vice president and Tucker Carlson were behind the appointments of Army veteran Daniel Davis. You may have heard of me. A sharp critic, he says, of U.S. support for Israel, a top national security intelligence position. The senator called Davis, quote, a guy who viciously hates Israel, and said that he helped Davis quickly get removed from the job. So here, a sitting president, U.S. senator, somebody who wants to run for president, for some reason mentioned me as somebody that he went after, as I guess he thinks that's going to make some of these Republican donors give him some cash and give him support for the war. For his attempt, because he really loves war and we don't. So a couple of things that we'll talk about there. For those who may not know, because I know a lot of you are new to our channel, the last year around February or March, I guess, I was designated as the Deputy Director for National Intelligence for Mission Integration. That's the person who's number 3 in the DNI. And I was supposed to be responsible for the president's daily brief. That would have been my primary objective. Mission integration, it combines the intelligence and puts it in an operational perspective that normal people can understand, so that you can explain to people why these intelligence issues here are important operationally. And there were many who did not like that. Tulsi Gabbard originally put me up for that position. It had been initially approved by the White House and was moving forward until who knows what. There was lots of things that went on at the time. At the time, a lot of the reporting came out that said a lot of pro-Israeli people were really antagonists against me. I subsequently learned that the chief of staff, Susie Wiles, eventually was the one that pulled the plug. But what we didn't know until now, anyway, was that Senator Cruz was apparently the one behind getting me sabotaged. And why is that? When he says that, I was a sharp critic of Israel and American support to Israel, that is not correct. And that is something that you're going to see a lot with Ted Cruz even here, is that he will be untrue, he will be deceptive, and he will flat out lie while accusing other people of doing the same thing. I have vociferously said, never changed my mind and will not change it now, and that I am not at all against Israel. To the contrary, I would say I am one of the most pro-Israeli people that there are, if you define pro-Israeli as somebody who wants something good for the people of Israel. And where I am adamantly opposed to the policies of the current secular government of Israel, of Benjamin Netanyahu, is because the actions he has taken are immoral, they're unsuccessful, and they're just grotesque, and they're inhuman in the way he's oppressing the people of Palestine, and of course destroying their way of life and killing tens of thousands of them. I'm also against it because it's harmful to his own people. I have said literally from the beginning of that war after 10/7 that even though Israel was right, and I defended their right to retaliate against the terrorist attack that happened to them on 10/7, 2023. No question about it. No caveats on that part. Where the big caveats came in, though, is what you did in response. And I said that their actions by going over the top and then when going way over the top actually have been sowing the seeds of future insecurity for Israel. History is going to show that Netanyahu's actions here sabotaged Israeli security, did not set it in positive directions. It is not for it. See, the likes of Senator Cruz think that the way you bring security for the state of Israel and why he places priority of Israel above the United States, above every country, is unclear to me. If you want to be a senator of Israel, go to Israel. Figure out how you can become a member of their country. I don't know. But if that's where your priority lies, go to Israel and run for Senate there or their parliament, the Knesset. But if you want to run for, and especially in my home state of Texas, if you want to be a senator there, then prioritize the needs, first of all, of the people of Texas, and then secondly, the people of the United States, because that's what a U.S. senator is supposed to do. You're supposed to be America first. Actually, Texas first, and then America first. That's what all the senators are supposed to do. But instead, he wants to prioritize Israel. And he thinks that he wants to take whatever Benjamin Netanyahu says and says, yes, that's what the U.S. should do. So if Netanyahu wants to kill a bunch of Palestinians, then that's what he thinks the U.S. should support. And he will destroy anyone who says otherwise. He will even trash the vice president of the United States if he thinks that they are not adequately behind destroying the Israeli foes, whoever Benjamin Netanyahu wants to. So if Benjamin Netanyahu thinks let's get rid of the Palestinians, if he thinks let's kill all the Yemenis, if he thinks let's kill all the Lebanese, if he thinks let's kill all the Iranians, let's destroy all their governments and just destroy everything. No negotiations, no diplomacy of any sort, just kill everyone. That's what he believes. And so he is prioritizing Israeli first over America first. And so I'm small potatoes in this whole situation here. I mean, if he's calling out the vice president of the United States to other Republican donors, that's a curious thing by itself. And I don't know why he thought that he could talk to Republican donors and no one's ever going to find out about this and it's never going to make its way into public. That seems kind of short-sighted as it is. But nevertheless, that's what he's done. And then he's also showing here how this man, not only is he prioritizing the interest of another country above our country, but it also graphically shows how he has no morals and he has no foundation of any principles other than self-aggrandizement. And for whatever reason, he somehow associates his own advancement with that of Israel, I guess. And my guess is that he thinks that that's something that's going to benefit him personally. Not because even he really cares about Israel so much, but that he sees a lot of other people do, a lot of people with money. So he wants to get that money so he can get power and eventually become president of the United States. And if he has to kowtow to Israel to do that, I think he has no problem doing that. But he clearly doesn't actually have a foundation, any kind of morals or values. That is self-evident. Because here is Brother Ted Cruz in 2016 when he was trying to defeat Donald Trump for the nomination for the GOP in 2016.
I'm going to tell you what I really think of Donald Trump. This man is a pathological liar. He doesn't know the difference between truth and lies. He lies practically every word that comes out of his mouth. And in a pattern that I think is straight out of a psychology textbook. His response is to accuse everybody else of lying.
Now, listen, that's just one soundbite. There's a lot more. Many other things that he was saying during that time. Lots of others were in this same category, Lindsey Graham being one of them. Lots of people who were vociferously against Donald Trump, emphatically just listed time after time and detail after detail with such vigor until he saw that it's actually in his favor. And he said, hey, but if I become friends with Donald Trump, he'll like me and then I can gain more power. And so now then, that same guy who said all these bad things about Donald Trump in 2016 and plenty of time around that, suddenly when Trump wins and he sees that his bread can be buttered by Trump and being a buddy of his and getting some of that glory off of him, he says stuff like this from 2025.
This was fantastic. Tonight was incredible. This is the 5th State of the Union address I've seen Trump give. it was by far his best. We're just over a month into it, and he had a litany of victories that we've already won, one after the other after the other. Listen, I thought he was joyful. I thought he was forward-looking. I thought he had the promise of America front and center.
He was joyful. He was front and center. Had America. Well, you should have followed that last one about putting America first. That's one of your big mistakes. But you see, folks, you can't have those kind of statements. You can't say these kinds of things in 2016 and then radically transform and mean these two. He obviously doesn't. This is one of the things Americans hate about politicians, and why members of the House and Senate have such low approval ratings just across the board, why the bodies themselves, because people are sick and tired of this stuff. They know that you don't mean it. And when they hear stuff like this, and when they see this other things, then they realize that you mean nothing. We can't count on anything that you say. You don't prioritize the United States. You don't prioritize the state of Texas. You prioritize. You don't even prioritize Israel. If all said and be done, if the truth known, I guarantee you, if something happened in public opinion turned against Israel, that dude would change his colors faster than a chameleon. He does not care about Israel. He cares about Ted Cruz. He cares about power. He cares about money, and he cares about becoming president of the United States. And so that's why he has these secret meetings. Foolishly, shows his judgment is also pretty weak. He thinks he can talk to Republican donors, trash the vice president, his potential rival for the 2028 run, and that no one's going to find out about it. I mean, how many times has stuff happened already in the last decade and a half or so where people thought they were talking privately and then somebody had a cell phone there and they recorded it? I mean, come on, man. You got to understand and expect anytime you say anything, anywhere in public or private or anywhere else, there's a recording. Anytime you're outside your home, expect that somebody's going to say something. It's going to be out there. So ideally, now this is kind of radical. I get it. Maybe if you had the same position all the time, it wouldn't matter if anybody had a recording, because then they would have you recorded saying the same thing in private that you say in public. And then there's no difference. Now, people may not like it, but at least you would be consistent and people would know where you stand. And they know that they could trust what you said. Even if they disagree with it, they could trust what you said because you're the same public as you are in private, because you actually have values. You actually have a core set of beliefs. But he doesn't. And he prioritizes himself, and it doesn't matter if he needs to support war to get that done. If he needs to support the interests of another country over ours, he'll do whatever it takes. And you know he's not the only one. Lindsey Graham is just like this. He said some of the most virulent things against Trump before and then turned into his biggest cheerleader. A whole bunch of guys are like that. Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, add him to the list. He was another one of those. He's just used to trash Trump. These guys either never meant what they said about Trump in the past, or they don't mean what they're saying now. You cannot have a situation to where you say something so passionately here and then 180 degrees out, say a different thing when you benefit, when you are given some power or prestige or money or both. That tells you, and that's why people don't like politics and politicians, generally speaking, because they see so few of them actually have any core beliefs besides self-aggrandizement and personal power, greed, money, all of that. And here it is right there on graphic display here. Now I mentioned it the first for the U.S. Senate and the U.S. House. Well, this actually happened on Christmas Day and the day after. I didn't think to bring it up before, but I just thought it was kind of interesting. And in the light of this U.S. Senator trying to take me out, I thought we'd bring that one up too, because it's kind of important in a certain sense as well. This is Derek Van Orden. This was on, I sent a post out on Christmas Day. And I was complaining about the president saying Trump tonight ordered yet another military strike into a foreign country with no American national security issues involved, without any observable, achievable military objective established, and without getting approval first from Congress, as is required by the Constitution, I added, and I went on from there. But the bottom line was, this was just another one of those situations to where the 1973 War Powers Act and the U.S. Constitution are being just wantonly ignored. And in this particular case, it was an attack in Nigeria. President Trump claimed that there was some Christians being killed there, so he just thought he'd launch a few missiles and see what happened. Completely against the Constitution and everything else. This person, Derek Van Orden, responds by saying, hey, dumbass, take a minute to actually read the Constitution before you try and tell people what's in it. Thank you for your service. That was also kind of weird, but then I guess that's just politics today as well. But as it turns out, I took more than just a minute to read it. I have paid a lot of attention to it. You've seen me put especially the key parts of Articles 1 and Article 2 of the U.S. Constitution on here all the time. So anyone else who hasn't read it, apparently to include this U.S. representative, also doesn't know. He's from Wisconsin, by the way, 3rd District of Wisconsin. Apparently, he hasn't read the Constitution, hasn't read the 1973 War Powers Act. So while he's calling me a dumbass, which, by the way, is just kind of embarrassing for a sitting member of the House of Representatives, why would you care about, I'm just going to be honest, a relatively obscure YouTuber? I mean, I'm a military veteran. I'm on TV. I've written some stuff here and there, but not a big name. A lot of people don't know me outside of watching these shows. But even if I was, why do you want to go and take on somebody and call them a dumbass because they render a policy evidence, position that's different from your own? Because listen, the fact is the U.S. Constitution is very clear. It was designed to be clear, and it is. It is just being ignored. Article 1 of the U.S. Constitution says that the House of Representatives, that the Congress alone has the power to declare war, and it alone has the power to call forth the militia and to defend the country and to oversee the military. All those powers, all of them, are in Congress. Article 2, and I believe it's Section 2 of the Constitution, lays out the duties and the responsibilities and authorities of the commander-in-chief. Now, we often think, and it's intentionally made this way, that the commander-in-chief is therefore in charge of the armed forces, and he can do whatever he wants with it because he's a commander-in-chief. That's not what the commander-in-chief is authorized to do statutorily by the Constitution, to which he swore an oath of allegiance. It says that after the militia has been called out and after it has been authorized by Congress, then and only then can he then use it in military operations. He cannot use it just because he wants to. The 1973 War Powers Act clarified those and made it even more explicit. It said that the commander-in-chief can only use the military in lethal military operations in other countries if there has been a declaration of war, specific statutory authorization, or we've been attacked. That's it. Those are the only 3 things. That's not what happened there. That's not what happened in Venezuela. That's not what happened in Syria. That's not what happened in Yemen. That's not what happened in Somalia. That's not what's probably going to happen again in Israel again this year. All of these things, because it happens so often. Lindsey Graham is the biggest advocate of this. He unilaterally has declared that the 1973 War Powers Act is unconstitutional. It's never gone to a court. It's never been tested. He doesn't have to worry about that. He just he's a war luster, loves to be using military power along with Ted Cruz and several others. That's what this guy here is for also. So while he mocks somebody, he expected no one to actually go back and look at it. I have. And now you are aware of what's in it too. So there you have members of the House of Representatives, members of the U.S. Senate that are violating wantonly the War Powers Act and the Constitution, to which we all at one point swore an oath. I did when I was on active duty. And understand also what they're doing here, because it is so important. They have unilaterally forfeited their power and forfeited what the Constitution set up. There was, in the last couple of weeks or so, there was a vote in the Senate to just impose the War Powers Resolution and a War Powers Act legislation to keep President Trump from doing anything further in Venezuela, not Iran, not where we're looming, not where there's been combat power pushed into the region, but somewhere it's already been used. Maybe he goes back in, maybe he doesn't, but they were saying you can't take any further action unless you come to Congress first, according to the Constitution. And even that got turned down. The Senate turned out to be, it was a 50-50 vote. Vice President broke the vote, and you know which direction he went. He says, nope, we're not going to put any constraints whatsoever on the president. House of Representatives, I believe it was also, I think the number was 215 to 215, but it wasn't enough to pass. Both Cruz and Van Orden both voted against it. Both of these men and all the compatriots that joined along with them said, we will not have a situation to where we exercise our constitutional given power, the separation of power of branches of government, co-equal branches of government. We will not have that. We are going to hand all of our power into the hands of the individual who's president of the United States. So we're erasing the Constitution, and it's become a dead letter, especially in regards to this. Now then, there is no more rule of law. There is no more constitutional constraints. There is no more actual separation of powers in these regards, especially. Maybe it still exists in some places, but what that tells you is that the government has now gotten to a place to where it will disregard any law, any constitutional order, anything that it doesn't want to do. And who's going to do anything about it? I'm telling you, this will come back to haunt you. I've been warning for a year already that when you get rid of the rule of law, and especially in something that, oh, well, I don't mind about this. I don't care about Venezuela. I don't care about these drug boats out there. We don't care about those. Well, you get rid of the rule of law then, and you defend the right and give power to the executive branch and saying they can do whatever they want to do. I promise you it would not stop there, and it hasn't. We now see just grotesque violations in all different parts of our own country here, most recently in Minnesota. More on that later. And it's not going to stop there either, folks, because once you get a lust for power and you get satiated with that and you see that nobody will do anything to stop it, then you get more hungry and you start taking more. You're never satisfied. Nobody's ever satisfied with power. The minute that you get power and unconstrained and your constraints are taken off, you're going to want more and you're going to take more. So we better find a backbone pretty quick. We better find out that the rule of law must apply to everyone. There should be no one above the rule of law, not members of the House, not members of the Senate, not the President of the United States, not officials, not regular Americans. Nobody should be above the rule of law. Now, that means nobody. I don't accept anyone from that list. That means protesters, if they violate the law in Minnesota, they should be held accountable. No hesitation on saying that. But if the members of the police force or ICE or any other border patrol, if they violate the law just because they're wearing a badge, does not give them the ability to be above it. Everybody has to be accountable and held to account in the rule of law, or we don't have it. And if we lose it and it's completely gone, folks, no one is going to be safe. Not you, not me, nobody. It won't just be some senator that's sabotaging my ability to get a high-ranking position. It can be a lot worse than that. It can be worse than that for you too. No matter what, whether you like the policies or hate the policies of the administration, you should be the first one to advocate that they all come within the rule of law and that we all abide by those, and we keep those boundaries in place. We keep those separations and distinct powers of the branches of government to access checks and balances. We should demand that those things be the case. That is more important than any policy, I promise you. There's a good reason those things were put in place. They've held us together for almost 250 years. And if we want like 25 more years or 2.5 more years more, we better get that fixed. Thanks very much, folks. Appreciate you. Look forward to seeing you tomorrow on the Daniel Davis Deep Dive.